This is Joe Biden, the resident of the United States. On November 5th, exactly 1 year before the 2024 election, a New York Times Siena College poll was released, and for Democrats, it was a disaster. The poll found that when it comes to the next presidential election, voters in Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, all states that Joe Biden won in 2020, would go for Donald Trump in 2024. And those poll results were nothing less than a 5-alarm fire for Democrats. And David Axelrod, former senior advisor to Barack Obama, poured fuel on those flames. It's very late to change horses. A lot will happen in the next year that no one can predict, and Biden's team says his resolve to run is firm. He's defied conventional wisdom before, but this poll will send tremors of doubt through the party, not bedwetting, but legitimate concern. And that New York Times poll was hardly an outlier. A CBS News YouGov poll showed that 51% of registered voters would choose Trump, compared to 48% for Joe Biden. And a CNN poll found that 49% of registered voters would choose Trump, compared to 45% for Biden. And David Axelrod, who is still a very relevant voice within the Democrat Party, has been around long enough to know that Democrats are in real trouble, and suggested that Joe Biden should drop out of the race. Only Joe Biden can make this decision. If he continues to run, he will be the nominee of the Democratic Party. What he needs to decide is whether that is wise, whether it's in his best interest or the country's. But everything Joe Biden does is in his best interest, so good luck trying to make him quit.
Mr. President, what's your message to Democrats who don't want you to run again?
They want me to run.
2/3 say they
Read
don't.
the polls. Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same. That poll showed that 92% of Democrats, if I ran, would vote for me.
A majority of Democrats say they don't want you to run again in 2024.
92% said if I did, they'd vote for me.
Biden was getting that number from a New York Times Siena College poll from July 2022, where 92% of Democrats would vote for Biden if he was the nominee and had the election been held that day. But nearly a year and a half later, in the same poll, only 73% of Democrats would definitely vote for Joe Biden. It's also worth noting that in the poll from July 2022, 37% of independents would have voted for Biden. But in November 2023, only 27% of independents would definitely vote for Joe Biden. Oh, and there's a fourth poll from Morning Consult that was released on November 8th that had Trump leading Biden by 2 points nationally. So within a 3-day period, 4 different polls have Trump beating Biden. And when he was asked about it, Biden got testy.
Why do you think it is that you're trailing Trump in all these swing state polls?
Because you don't read the polls. I'll forgive. There are 10 polls. 8 of them I'm beating him in those states. 8 of them. You guys only do 2. CNN and New York Times. Check it out.
Read the polls, Jack!
Check it out. We'll get you a copy of all those polls.
You don't believe you're trailing in battleground states?
No, I don't.
So Biden claims that out of 10 polls, that he was beating Trump in 8 of them, even though I brought you the results from 4 polls that all came out within the same week. And yes, we're still waiting for copies of those non-existent polls that Biden mentioned. I know you're shocked.
We have to really take these polls with a grain of salt. And one of the reasons why is just a year ago, right, back in 2022, there was the red wave that never materialized, right? And then back in October of 22, there were multiple stories about how there was going to be a red wave, Democrats were going to be wiped out.
But the claims of a red wave came from pundits and conventional wisdom. A, because historically the House and the Senate flip in the midterms during a president's first term, and B, Joe Biden was so unpopular that the midterms would just have to be a referendum on Biden, right? And while there wasn't a red wave, Republicans barely did take back the House of Representatives. And that's causing a lot of problems for Biden and the Democrats, including the Biden impeachment inquiry. So there are bright spots.
And I'll take it even further. In 2011, this time in 2011, we saw You know, we saw we saw polls of Senator Romney beating President Obama, and that's where those polls were.
We are a year out, and if you go back and look at comparable presidencies, Barack Obama was behind at this point in his reelection.
Except that is what you call revisionist history. Out of the 14 polls listed on Real Clear Politics that took place in November 2021, only 4 of them had Romney beating Obama. And for the entire month of November, Obama's average was 45% to Romney's 43%.
You have to take these polls with a grain of salt.
And on a crazy side note, Hillary Clinton also said this on The View.
You know, I hated losing, and I especially hated losing to him.
Yes, we know.
But I immediately said, look, we have to give him a chance. We've got to support, you know, the president we have, and I meant it.
What a crock of shit.
I'm going to share with you what I intended to say if I had been elected in 2016. My fellow Americans, today you sent a message to the whole world.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business. Complicated.
So when it comes to comparing Barack Obama and Joe Biden at the same point in their terms, they only have one thing in common. According to Gallup, Barack Obama's approval rating in November 2021, i.e. near the end of his 3rd year in office, was at 42% with a disapproval rating of 50%. And according to 538, Joe Biden's current approval rating is far worse at 38.5%. with a disapproval of 55.7%. But despite the spin that you heard from Crooked Hillary and Cringe Jean-Pierre, Obama's re-election challenges are not remotely the same as Joe Biden's. For example, Barack Obama was a very skilled politician. Joe Biden, on the other hand, is not. In fact, he can't even remember Barack Obama's name.
One of the things I convinced President Ladd when I was vice president, I convinced the president to do, provide money for high-speed rail.
And that's only one of the thousands of examples as to why people question whether or not Biden should run in 2024.
That astonishing number on whether or not Biden has the stamina and sharpness to serve effectively as president, only 25% of poll respondents say that he does have the stamina, 74% say no.
And before Joe Biden, there was never a concern that a sitting president was going to eventually fall and break his hip. Nor had we ever had a president fall up a flight of stairs 3 times in a row, no less. And say what you want about Donald Trump, but he's never had a problem walking off a stage. Unlike President Roomba, who appears to be in a constant state of confusion. Which way, Jill? And unlike Barack Obama, Joe Biden is on the verge of being impeached. Here's Chairman of the Oversight Committee, James Comer.
Remember when Joe Biden told the American people that his son didn't make any money in China?
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China?
Well, not only did he lie about his son Hunter making money in China, but it also turns out that $40,000 in laundered China money landed in Joe Biden's bank account in the form of a personal check. And the Oversight Committee has it.
So you may recall from my previous video that Joe Biden received a check for $200,000 from his brother James with loan repayment written on it. But since then, a second loan repayment consisting of $40,000 has been revealed, and where that money originated from is concerning.
First, Northern International Capital, a Chinese company associated with CEFC, wired $5 million to Hudson West 3, a joint venture established by Hunter Biden and a CEFC associate. Then Hudson West 3 sent $400,000 to an entity owned and controlled by Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden wired $150,000 to Lion Hall Group, a company owned by James and Sarah Biden. Sarah Biden then withdrew $50,000 in cash from Lion Hall Group. Later the same day, she deposited it into her and James Biden's personal checking account. A few days later, Sarah Biden cut a check to Joe Biden for $40,000.
Joe Biden has been insisting for years that he never benefited from his family's business dealings or got money from foreign countries. But this was always a lie. And you may remember the whole 10% for the big guy thing. Well, you don't have to be an expert in math to understand that 10% of 400,000 is 40,000. And if you're a Joe Biden simp that believes that 40 grand was a loan repayment, well, that's also problematic.
But even if this $40,000 check was a loan repayment from James Biden, it still shows how Joe benefited from his family cashing in on his name, with money from China no less.
Since my original video on the matter, additional details have been revealed, and it doesn't look good. According to a CNN article on October 31st, the banking records show that the $200,000 wire transfer was sent from an attorney trust account at a Wilmington, Delaware law firm that Joe Biden co-founded decades ago and that still has his long-term friend Melvin Monzak as a partner. Yet the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, Jamie Raskin, wrote a letter to Chairman Comer and stated, "The bank records provided to the committee clearly show that President Biden had $200,000 wired to his brother, and there was clear evidence that this transaction was a short-term interest-free loan between brothers." But Jamie Raskin is lying, because clear evidence that it was a loan between brothers does not exist. Because according to CNN, the banking records do not show Joe Biden's name anywhere on the wire transfer. And on top of that, the two repayments weren't made out to the attorney trust account and weren't wired there. Instead, it was made directly to Joe Biden. And according to CNN, Joe Biden deposited the $200,000 check from his brother in a different bank account and not the attorney trust account. In other words, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, then it's probably money laundering. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time, if there is a next time.